The space station floated like a metal island in the darkness between two worlds. Concordia was supposed to be neutral ground, a place where humans and Zellarians could talk without guns pointed at each other. For 6 long months, representatives from both species had met in its cold conference rooms, trying to find a way to avoid a war that could burn half the galaxy. Admiral Jack Morrison sat at the human side of the long table, his gray hair catching the harsh light from above. His hands were folded calmly in front of him, but his blue eyes watched everything. Next to him, Dr. Lisa Carter shuffled through her notes one more time. She had spent weeks preparing for this final meeting, hoping against hope that reason would win over pride. Commander Ben Hayes stood near the wall, his military uniform pressed and perfect. He said nothing, but his presence reminded everyone that soldiers were waiting for orders somewhere in the dark. Ambassador Kate Sullivan, the youngest of the human team, tried to look confident even though her heart was beating fast in her chest. Across the table, the Zellarians looked like something from a nightmare. Their insect-like bodies were covered in hard shells that gleamed under the lights. Compound eyes reflected the room back at them in thousands of tiny pieces. Hive speaker Zex Thul led their group, his mandibles clicking as he spoke. When Zellarians talked, it sounded like metal scraping against stone. The war had started small, just disputes over who could settle which planets. Humans had been spreading across the galaxy for 100 years, building new homes on empty worlds. The Zellarians claimed those worlds belonged to them, even though they had never lived there. Both sides had built up their fleets, and now thousands of ships waited in the darkness, ready to fight. Morrison had come to these talks believing that smart people could find a way to avoid killing each other. He had been wrong before, but he had hoped this time would be different. The Zellarians were older than humans, their empire stretching across hundreds of star systems. They should have been wise enough to know that war helped no one. "We have made our final decision," Hive speaker Zex Thul announced, his voice filling the room like grinding gears. "The terms we offer are generous beyond what your species deserves." Dr. Carter looked up from her papers. She had spent her whole career studying alien cultures, trying to understand how different minds worked. The Zellarians confused her because they seemed to think that being older made them automatically right about everything. "We're listening," Morrison said quietly. His voice was steady, showing no emotion. Zex Thul's compound eyes glittered as he began to read from a long document. "First, humans will abandon 12 of your core colony worlds. These planets will be returned to proper Zellarian administration. Second, all future human expansion must be approved by the Zellarian High Command. Third, humanity will pay tribute to the Empire for the next 100 years, as compensation for your illegal occupation of our rightful territories." The room went completely silent. Morrison's expression did not change at all. He simply reached over and closed his data pad with a soft click. The sound seemed very loud in the quiet room. Commander Hayes shifted slightly, his hand moving closer to his weapon. Ambassador Sullivan's face went pale, but she kept her mouth shut. Dr. Carter stopped writing and looked at Morrison, waiting to see what he would do. "We appreciate your generous terms," Morrison said finally. His voice was calm and polite, the same tone he might use to order coffee. "We'll need time to consider this proposal." Zex Thul's mandibles clicked faster, which the humans had learned meant he was pleased. "You have 72 hours to accept. After that, the Zellarian fleet will begin operations to restore proper order to this region of space." Another Zellarian, one with silver markings on his shell, leaned forward. "Perhaps now you understand your proper place in the galaxy. Humans are young and hasty. The Empire has existed for 1,000 years. We know how these things work." Morrison nodded slowly, as if he was thinking about what they had said. 1,000 years is indeed a long time. You must have learned many things. "We have learned that strength determines truth," Zex Thul replied. "Your species expanded too quickly, claimed too much. Now you must learn to accept limits." Dr. Carter watched Morrison's face carefully. She had worked with him for 5 years and knew all his expressions. Right now, he looked like a man doing math in his head, calculating numbers that no one else could see. That look usually meant trouble for someone. Well, Morrison said, standing up slowly, I think we've heard everything we need to hear. Thank you for your time. The human delegation began packing their things. They moved without hurry, folding papers and closing cases with quiet efficiency. Ambassador Sullivan thanked the station staff for their hospitality. Commander Hayes checked his watch and made a note in his personal log. Dr. Carter gathered her research materials, making sure nothing was left behind. The Zalarians watched this with satisfaction. To them, human politeness looked like surrender. Zexthul clicked his mandibles in what passed for Zalarian laughter. Wisdom comes to all species eventually. Even humans can learn their place. Morrison shook hands with the station commander, a neutral alien who had tried his best to make the talks work. Thank you for your efforts, Morrison said sincerely. Please give our regards to your family. As the human shuttle prepared to leave, Morrison sent a simple message to Earth. Just 3 words. Talks have concluded. Dr. Carter noticed that he did not say the talks had failed. He did not say they had succeeded either. The message was just a fact, nothing more. What the Zalarians did not know was that those 3 words triggered something that had been planned for months. Across Zalarian space, human merchants suddenly discovered urgent business elsewhere. Human diplomats remembered important meetings back home. Human explorers found that their surveys were complete. Human tourists decided their vacations were over. Within hours, humans began disappearing from Zalarian worlds like morning mist in sunlight. They left quietly without fuss or explanation. They paid their bills, thanked their hosts, and departed with polite smiles. No one seemed to be in a hurry. No one seemed afraid. They just went home. Back on Concordia, Zexthul celebrated with his team. They believed they had won a great victory without firing a shot. The humans had been shown their place, and now proper order could be restored to the galaxy. The Empire would grow stronger, and younger species would learn to respect their betters. None of them noticed that Morrison had not seemed angry or desperate when he left. He had not argued or pleaded or threatened. He had simply listened, calculated, and made a decision. That should have worried them, but they were too pleased with themselves to pay attention. 3 days later, when human space went completely silent, the Zalarians assumed it was fear. They did not realize that sometimes, when humans stop talking, it means they have decided to let their actions speak instead. They did not understand that the most dangerous human is often the one who stays calm when everyone expects him to be angry. The 72-hour deadline approached like a storm on the horizon. But Admiral Morrison was no longer thinking about deadlines. He was thinking about mathematics, logistics, and the look in Zexthul's compound eyes when the Zalarian had talked about teaching humans their proper place. Soon, the Zalarians would learn something about humans that they had never bothered to study. They would discover what happened when a species that preferred peace was forced to choose war instead. Captain Amy Rodriguez was loading cargo containers when the message came through. Her ship, the New Horizons, sat docked at Zalarian Trade Station 7, a busy place where merchants from dozens of species came to buy and sell. Amy had been trading with the Zalarians for 3 years and knew their ways well enough to make good money. The message was short and simple. Code Midnight. Return to Terra immediately. It came from Admiral Morrison himself, marked with the highest priority codes. Amy stared at the screen for a moment, then began shutting down her loading operations. Her crew looked confused, but they knew better than to question orders from Earth Command. Pack it up, Amy told her first officer. We're leaving now. But Captain, we haven't finished loading the dilithium crystals, he protested. That's a 1 million credit shipment. Leave it, Amy said firmly. Pay the dock fees and file our departure with station control. Tell them we had a family emergency back home. Across the station, other human traders were doing the same thing. Captain Mike Johnson finished his fuel purchases and left without collecting his payment from a Zalarian merchant. Commander Sarah Davis canceled her shore leave and recalled her crew to their exploration ship. Dr. Lisa Brown packed her medical supplies and closed her clinic that served both human and alien patients. The Zalarians at first thought nothing of it. Humans came and went all the time. busy with their strange customs and unpredictable schedules. Station Commander Klexta noticed the departures but assumed it was some sort of human holiday. These younger species had so many odd celebrations, but as hours passed, the pattern became clear. Every human in Zalarian space was leaving, not just traders and explorers, but diplomats, tourists, students, and researchers. They all found reasons to go home, and they all left quietly without making any fuss. On the Zalarian homeworld of Kethvar, Intelligence Officer Vexmol noticed the pattern first. His job was to watch human activities and report anything unusual. A few humans leaving was normal. All humans leaving at once was not. "Sir," he reported to his commander, "we're seeing a complete withdrawal of human presence from our space. Every human vessel, every human citizen, they're all heading back to their territory." Commander Thexral clicked his mandibles dismissively. "Cowardice," he said. "They know what's coming and they're running away like frightened children. This proves we were right about their weakness." Meanwhile, on Earth, things were moving very differently than the Zalarians imagined. President Helen Brooks sat in the underground command center deep beneath the capital city. The room was filled with screens showing star maps, fleet positions, and tactical data. Admiral Morrison stood beside her, no longer wearing his diplomatic uniform. Now he wore the dark blue of Fleet Command, with all his medals and ribbons properly displayed. "They actually thought we would accept their terms," President Brooks said, looking at the recorded demands from the peace talks. "They mistook patience for weakness," Morrison replied. "They thought our attempts at diplomacy meant we were afraid to fight." General Paul Davis approached their table carrying a thick folder. His face was serious, but not worried. "All assets are in position, sir. Operation Sledgehammer is ready to proceed on your order." President Brooks looked at the star maps showing human and Zalarian territories. The two regions were mixed together like pieces of a puzzle, with trade routes and shipping lanes connecting hundreds of worlds. It looked peaceful, but everyone in the room knew that was about to change. "What are our chances?" she asked. "Better than they think," Morrison answered. "The Zalarians have been preparing for the war they want to fight. We've been preparing for the war we're going to fight." Dr. Rachel Stone entered the command center carrying a datapad filled with technical specifications. She was the head of the Human Defense Research Division, a quiet woman who designed very loud weapons. "The new kinetic bombardment systems are online," she reported. "Stealth fleet deployment is complete. All our hidden assets are active and ready." What the Zalarians did not know was that humans had been getting ready for this possibility since the first day they met. Every peaceful trade mission had been mapping Zalarian space and identifying important targets. Every diplomatic visit had gathered intelligence about their military capabilities. Every cultural exchange had placed human agents in key positions. Captain Steve Miller commanded the stealth ship Ghostwalker, floating invisible in the darkness near the Zalarian border. His ship was one of 20 like it, equipped with technology that the Zalarians had never seen. They could slip past any sensor, hide in any shadow, and strike without warning. "All quiet on the Zalarian side," he reported to Fleet Command. "Their ships are moving to standard defensive positions. They're preparing for a conventional attack on our colonies." Admiral Morrison smiled grimly. The Zalarians were thinking like Zalarians, which meant they were thinking wrong. They expected humans to defend their homes and wait for the enemy to come to them. They expected big battles between massive fleets with honor and glory, and all the traditional rules of war. They did not expect humans to bring the war to them. Commander Laura White sat in the intelligence center, listening to intercepted Zalarian communications. The enemy was confident, even happy. They talked about teaching humans proper respect, about showing the galaxy who really ruled this region of space. Their fleet commanders discussed which human worlds to attack first, debating whether to destroy them completely or just damage them enough to force surrender. "They're planning to make examples of our outer colonies," she reported. "They want to break our spirit by showing how helpless we are to protect our people." "Let them plan," Morrison said calmly. "In 18 hours, they'll learn the difference between planning and doing." The countdown to the 72-hour deadline continued. Across human space, families went about their normal lives. not knowing that their government was preparing for the largest military operation in human history. Children went to school, workers went to their jobs, and life continued as usual. But in hidden bases and secret facilities, another kind of preparation was happening. Fleet Admiral Tony Garcia checked his ships one final time. His task force had been traveling for days through empty space, following routes that no Zalarian had ever mapped. They moved in complete silence, their engines running cold, their communication systems shut down. They were ghosts in the darkness, heading toward a target that the enemy would never expect. The Zalarian military command was busy preparing their own plans. They positioned their fleets around important human worlds, ready to begin the systematic conquest they had been dreaming about. They expected the humans to beg for mercy once they saw Zalarian power in action. General Kexmore, the greatest Zalarian military leader, studied the tactical displays in his flagship. "The humans will break quickly," he told his staff. "Young, species always do when they face real strength. A few destroyed colonies and they'll surrender everything." His officers clicked their mandibles in agreement. The humans had shown no signs of military genius during the peace talks. They had been polite, reasonable, and weak. This would be over quickly. What none of them understood was that Admiral Morrison had been polite because he chose to be polite. He had been reasonable because reason was useful, and he had appeared weak because appearing weak was part of the plan. The 72 hours were almost over. Soon the Zalarians would send their ultimatum and begin their attack. But they would not be attacking where they expected. Instead, they would learn what happened when humans stopped being diplomatic and started being human. In the command center on Earth, Morrison checked his watch one final time. 18 hours until deadline, he announced. President Brooks nodded. "Begin Operation Sledgehammer." The orders went out instantly, traveling through secret channels to ships that had been waiting in the darkness. Across the galaxy, human forces began to move toward targets that the Zalarians had never thought to defend. The war was about to begin, but it would not be the war anyone expected. The 72-hour deadline passed at exactly midnight Earth time. 1 second later, the war began. But it did not start where the Zalarians expected it to start. Admiral Tony Garcia's fleet dropped out of hyperspace above the planet Kethmore, home to the most famous military academy in the Zalarian Empire. For 800 years, the best Zalarian officers had trained on this world. Statues of great generals covered the campus. Museums displayed weapons from 1,000 victories. It was the heart of Zalarian military pride. The planet's defense systems had exactly 17 seconds to react before Garcia's ships opened fire. The kinetic bombardment came from space like the fist of an angry god. Solid metal rods, accelerated to incredible speed, struck the academy with the force of small nuclear weapons. The ancient buildings, built to last forever, turned to dust and rubble in moments. The defensive satellites tried to respond, but human stealth fighters had already disabled them. Garcia watched the destruction through his ship's cameras. "Target eliminated," he reported to Earth Command. No casualties among Academy staff or students. The humans had waited until the facility was empty for the night, striking the symbol without killing the people inside. 17 minutes after it began, the attack was over. Garcia's fleet vanished back into hyperspace, leaving only wreckage and a very clear message behind. At the same moment, 11 other strikes hit targets across Zalarian space. Captain Maria Santos led her squadron against the central communications hub on Vextar. The massive facility that coordinated messages between hundreds of Zalarian worlds disappeared in a ball of fire. Colonel Jeff Turner's Marines captured the primary fuel depot at Klexmore, taking control of enough starship fuel to power a fleet for years. Commander Nina Lopez struck the largest Zalarian shipyard, where new warships were built. Her bombers destroyed the construction facilities and left the half-finished vessels floating dead in space. Captain Danny Clark hit their main sensor station, blinding the Zalarians to human movements across an entire sector. Each attack was perfectly planned and flawlessly executed. The human forces struck hard, achieved their objectives, and vanished before Zalarian reinforcements could arrive. It was like fighting shadows that could kill. On the Zalarian homeworld, emergency alarms screamed through the capital city. Military commanders ran through corridors trying to understand what was happening. Their communications were down, their sensors were blind, their fuel supplies were captured or destroyed. General Kexmore stood in the war room staring at displays that showed disaster after disaster. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "The humans have no significant fleet presence in our territory. Our intelligence networks reported nothing." His aide, a younger officer named Texeral, checked the reports again. "Sir, it appears the human forces came from outside our sensor range. They must have been traveling for days through empty space to reach these positions." "That's impossible," Kexmore insisted. "No one can navigate hyperspace routes through unexplored regions. The risk of hitting a star or planet is too great." What he did not understand was that humans had been quietly mapping those unexplored regions for years. Every trade mission, every diplomatic convoy, every scientific expedition had been gathering navigation data. The routes the Zalarians thought were too dangerous to use had become highways for human military forces. Back on Earth, Admiral Morrison watched the tactical displays with satisfaction. The first phase of Operation Sledgehammer was complete. 12 critical targets had been hit simultaneously, and not a single human ship had been lost. "Phase 2 is ready to begin," General Davis reported. "Admiral Garcia's task force is moving toward the secondary objectives." President Brooks studied the strategic map. Red markers showed where Zalarian forces were positioned, waiting to attack human colonies. Blue markers showed where human forces actually were, moving through space. The enemy did not know existed. "The Zalarians still think this is a defensive war," she observed. "They're waiting for us to protect our homes while they choose which ones to attack." "They don't understand human military doctrine," Morrison replied. "We don't wait for the enemy to come to us. We take the fight to them." The Zalarian response was predictable and slow. Their rigid command structure meant every decision had to go up through multiple levels of authority. By the time orders reached their fleet commanders, the humans had already moved on to new targets. Admiral Zekthor commanded the largest Zalarian battle fleet, positioned near the human colony world of New Boston. His orders were to destroy the planet's defenses and force its surrender, showing the galaxy that humans could not protect their own people. "Begin the attack," he ordered his fleet. But when his ships arrived at New Boston, they found only empty space and automated defense platforms. The human civilian population had been quietly evacuated weeks earlier. What looked like a defenseless colony was actually a trap, filled with hidden weapons and robot defenders. The Zalarian fleet walked into a killing field. Mines disguised as asteroids exploded around their ships. Hidden missile batteries fired from concealed positions. Automated gun platforms opened fire from the shadows of moons and space stations. Admiral Zekthor watched his proud fleet torn apart by an enemy he could not see or fight directly. "Retreat," he ordered, but it was too late. Half his ships were already destroyed or disabled. At the same time, Captain Mike Johnson's destroyer squadron struck the Zalarian supply lines. Military vessels needed fuel, ammunition, and spare parts to keep fighting. Johnson's ships hit the cargo convoys carrying those supplies, leaving Zalarian forces stranded without resources. Major Sarah Kim led marine assault teams against Zalarian command centers. Instead of defending fixed positions, her soldiers struck at the enemy's ability to coordinate their forces. Communication hubs, command posts, and control centers became priority targets. The Zalarians tried to adapt, but their training worked against them. They had been taught to fight honorable battles between large fleets with clear rules and predictable tactics. Human warfare seemed chaotic and dishonorable to their minds. Captain Amy Rodriguez, the same trader who had received the evacuation order, now commanded a converted merchant vessel filled with electronic warfare equipment. Her job was to jam Zalarian communications and make their coordination even more difficult. "Their command frequencies are blocked," she reported. "Fleety, Admiral Zekmore cannot communicate with his scattered forces." The psychological effect was as important as the physical damage. The Zalarians had ruled this region of space for centuries, secure in their superiority over younger species. Now they were being systematically defeated by humans they had dismissed. as primitive barbarians. News of the human victories spread faster than Zalarian authorities could suppress it. Other alien species watched in amazement as the mighty Zalarian Empire was dismantled piece by piece. Some began to wonder if they had chosen the wrong side in this conflict. Captain Emma Davis commanded the human cruiser Defiance in the war's first major fleet battle. The Zalarian Grand Fleet, seeking to restore their honor through glorious combat, finally found human forces willing to fight directly. But even this battle did not go as the Zalarians expected. Admiral Morrison himself led the human task force, and he had no intention of fighting a traditional engagement. "Remember," he told his captains, "we're not here to prove our courage. We're here to win." The human ships did not form neat battle lines or follow standard engagement protocols. They fought like individuals working together, each captain making independent decisions while supporting the overall plan. Some ships attacked directly, while others flanked the enemy. Some focused on heavy warships, while others hunted down support vessels. The Zalarians, trained to fight as a unified formation, found themselves outmaneuvered by human unpredictability. Their compound eyes, designed to see threats from all directions, could not track enemies that seemed to be everywhere at once. When the battle ended, the Grand Fleet was scattered wreckage floating in space. Human losses were surprisingly light. The galaxy watched in shock as the species that had sued for peace revealed what human warfare actually looked like when diplomacy failed. General Kexmore received the news in his bunker on the Zalarian homeworld. The greatest fleet in their empire's history had been destroyed by the same humans who had sat politely through months of peace negotiations. "How did we so badly misunderstand them?" he asked his remaining staff. No one had an answer. They had seen human diplomats and assumed they were seeing human warriors. They had mistaken patience for weakness and politeness for cowardice. Now they were learning the difference between what humans chose to do and what humans could do when forced to act. The war was far from over, but the tide had already turned. The Zalarians were no longer the hunters. They had become the hunted. 3 months after the war began, everything had changed. The mighty Zalarian Empire, which had ruled hundreds of star systems for 1,000 years, was crumbling like a house built on sand. Captain Andy Miller's ship intercepted another Zalarian communication, this one from their high command to scattered fleet remnants. The message was desperate and confused. "Retreat to defensive positions. Avoid engagement with human forces. Await further orders." Dr. Lisa Carter, now serving as Admiral, Morrison's chief intelligence advisor, studied the intercepted messages with growing amazement. "Their entire command structure is falling apart," she reported. "Lower-ranking officers are starting to question orders. Some border worlds are considering surrender." What the humans had discovered was that the Zalarian Empire was not as strong as it appeared. For centuries, they had ruled through fear and tradition, never facing a real challenge to their power. When humans began systematically defeating them, cracks appeared in their society that no one had expected. Captain Beth Turner commanded a diplomatic mission to the Zalarian world of Nextar, where local leaders had secretly contacted human forces. The planet's population had watched human victories with growing hope. They had been ruled by the Empire for 300 years and were tired of taking orders from distant masters. "We offer you protection," Turner told the local council. "Join with us and you'll be free to govern yourselves." The council members, insect-like creatures with green shells instead of the Empire's traditional black, clicked their mandibles, nervously. "The Empire will punish us if we rebel," their leader said. "The Empire can't protect itself anymore," Turner replied. "How can it punish you?" News of successful human operations spread through the galaxy faster than Zalarian authorities could control. Other alien species, many of whom had been forced to submit to Zalarian rule, began to take notice. The empire that had seemed invincible was being torn apart by humans who had been dismissed as weak newcomers. On Earth, President Brooks addressed the Galactic Council for the first time. The Great Assembly Hall, located on the neutral world of Harmony Station, was filled with representatives from dozens of species. Many had never seen a human leader before. "6 months ago, we came to you seeking peace," Brooks said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. We offered compromise, negotiation, and mutual respect. The Zalarian Empire chose war instead. The assembled aliens listened in silence. Some had supported the Zalarians, believing in their 1,000-year reign. Others had been forced to support them, having no choice in the matter. Now they all watched as a human leader spoke from a position of strength. We showed restraint because we believed in peaceful solutions, Brooks continued. That restraint was mistaken for weakness. Our diplomacy was seen as cowardice. The Empire learned too late that humans prefer peace but excel at war. Meanwhile, the Zalarian High Command was facing its worst crisis in history. Their greatest generals had been defeated. Their fleets were scattered or destroyed. Their communications were compromised, and their supply lines were cut. Worse still, their own people were beginning to lose faith in the Empire's invincibility. Hive speaker Zexthul, the same arrogant official who had delivered the ultimatum to Admiral Morrison, now found himself in a very different position. His compound eyes, once filled with pride and certainty, now reflected fear and confusion. How did we miscalculate so badly? He asked his remaining advisors. Our intelligence said humans were technologically inferior. Our military experts assured us they could not match our strategic capabilities. His chief of intelligence, a nervous creature named Vexcol, struggled to explain. Sir, it appears the humans were deliberately hiding their true capabilities during the peace negotiations. Every merchant ship, every diplomatic mission, every cultural exchange was gathering intelligence about our defenses. You mean they were spying on us while pretending to seek peace? Zexthul's mandibles clicked angrily. It appears so, sir. They turned our own openness against us. What the Zalarians still did not understand was that humans had not been pretending to seek peace. They genuinely wanted to avoid war, but they had also prepared for the possibility that peace might fail. While negotiating in good faith, they had also planned for the worst-case scenario. The war's turning point came when the Zalarians attempted to use their ultimate weapon. Deep in their most secure research facility, they had been building a planet killer, a massive device designed to destroy entire worlds. They planned to use it against Earth, hoping to break human morale by destroying their homeworld. Colonel Jim Barnes led the intelligence team that discovered the weapon's existence. His agents, who had been operating in Zalarian space for years, reported that the device was nearly complete and would be ready for use within days. We can't let them fire that thing, Admiral Morrison told his staff. If they destroy Earth, they'll have won regardless of our military victories. Captain Alan Stone volunteered to lead the mission to stop the weapon. His special operations team had been training for exactly this kind of operation. They would have to infiltrate the most heavily defended facility in Zalarian space and either disable or destroy the planet killer before it could be used. The mission became legendary among human military forces. Stone's team infiltrated the facility using stolen Zalarian uniforms and forged identification codes. They moved through the complex like ghosts, avoiding guards and security systems with skills learned from years of preparation. When they reached the weapons control center, they discovered something unexpected. The planet killer could be reprogrammed to target any world, not just Earth. With quick thinking and technical expertise, they turned the Empire's ultimate weapon against their own military installations. The weapon fired once, destroying the primary Zalarian naval base and the remainder of their home fleet. Then Stone's team destroyed the device itself, ensuring it could never be used again. The Empire's last hope for victory died with their ultimate weapon. News of the weapon's destruction spread throughout Zalarian space. The psychological impact was devastating. If their own ultimate weapon could be turned against them, what hope did they have of defeating humanity? 6 months after the original peace talks had failed, new negotiations began. But this time, the circumstances were completely different. Admiral Morrison sat in the same chair at the same table on Concordia Station, but now he wore the uniform of a victorious commander rather than a hopeful diplomat. Across from him, Hive speaker Zexthul looked like a broken creature. His compound eyes were dull, his mandibles moved weakly, and his voice had lost its arrogant tone. "What are your terms?" Zexthul asked quietly. Morrison's terms were simple and direct. Complete Zalarian withdrawal from disputed territories. Reparations for the aggressive war they had started. Recognition of human sovereignty over their colonies. And most importantly, an end to Zalarian claims of superiority over younger species. We will withdraw, Zexithol agreed. We will pay reparations. We will recognize your territorial claims. And the other species under your rule? Morrison asked. They are free to choose their own paths. Within a year, the Zalarian Empire had shrunk to half its former size. Dozens of worlds chose independence or alliance with humanity. The galaxy's balance of power shifted permanently, with humans emerging as a major force in interstellar politics. Captain Lucy Adams, who had once been a simple cargo pilot, now commanded exploration missions to former Zalarian territory. Her job was to help newly independent worlds establish their own governments and defense forces. It's amazing, she told her crew as they approached another liberated world. 6 months ago, these people lived under Empire rule for centuries. Now they're building their own future. Admiral Morrison returned to his office on Earth, looking out at the blue world that had nearly been destroyed by alien weapons. His aide, a young officer named Lieutenant David Park, asked him if he regretted how the negotiations had ended. Morrison thought for a long moment before answering. I regret that war was necessary. I don't regret that we were prepared for it. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about humanity. Humans preferred peace and would work hard to achieve it. They would negotiate, compromise, and make reasonable offers to avoid conflict. But when forced to fight, they fought with a determination and creativity that older species had never encountered. Other alien civilizations studied the human victory, trying to understand how a species so young had defeated an empire so old. The answer was simple but profound. Humans did not fight the way their enemies expected them to fight. They adapted, improvised, and turned every disadvantage into an opportunity. In schools across human space, children learned about the war that had made their species a galactic power. They learned about Admiral Morrison's patience, President Brooks' leadership, and the countless soldiers who had fought to protect human freedom. But most importantly, they learned that sometimes the best way to preserve peace is to be very, very good at war.